Hello, and thank you for listening to KatlegoOpining podcast with me, Katlego Nkuna. In this episode, we are talking to Sfundo Mafuyeka, a student activist from the Tshwane University of Technology who was among the many that took part in the struggle for free education in the form of protest during the Fees Must Fall demonstrations. The demonstration saw the then President of State, former President Jacob Zuma, overruling the recommendations made by the Commission into the feasibility of fee-free higher education and training. And this is some of what Sfundo had to say about free education.
So which free quality education are you talking about? Because it's still us who are paying for this education through this thing of VAT and so forth. So there is no free education, by the way. There's no such thing at all. Mm-hmm. We are still subjected to the same thing that we've been subjected to us. So the issue of free education is not there.
Towards the end of his term, President Zuma made an announcement that there would be free higher education for students categorized as poor and working class in South Africa. The conversation that I have with Sfundo is surrounding the state of student activism in South Africa during this age. So, Sfundo, thank you for agreeing to talk to us. I would like for us to talk about the state and role of student activism in our country, but in the South African context especially, there is no talking about student activism without including TUT, as it is thought to be the most politicized or the most violent institution of higher learning. Would you agree with this sentiment? Are you violent?
No, we are not violent. But first and foremost, I must tell you in good faith that if really TUT was the most politicized university, that thing was going to be demonstrated or reflected through the voters turnout. Because this campus on its own, TUT-run campus, it accommodates approximately 30,000 students. But the voters turnout, it is always less than 6,000. Understand?
I've seen
that thing shows that our students, they still lack that political awareness and so forth. Understand? So I don't think we are the most politicized university of higher learning in the country. But well, of course, Lenin tells us that it is not the consciousness of men that determines the material conditions of our people, but the material conditions of our people determine the consciousness of men. The situations that we find ourselves under, it forces us to engage in violent activities and so forth. Lack of accommodation is one of those reasons. Lack of NSFAS, it's some of the reasons that make students to go to the street. But well, of course, we must not forget the management who are actually the perpetrators of such violence and so forth. Because are the ones when we engage them in a table peacefully, just so to say that these are the demands that we are making. Because we can't request for something that ordinarily a student is supposed to be having. Understand? Then what they do, they just give us false promises and then they end up not delivering. So if all else fails, if we have exhausted all avenues, they leave us with no choice but to do what? To go to the street. And if we are taking it to the street, we demonstrate peacefully, we close the gate, we don't even burn properties, we close the gate and then we do what? We burn trees and so forth. What the management does, they call police, they call bouncers on us to come and attack us. And what must we do when such people are perpetuating violence against us? We must respond with fire. That's why we are saying that we are not violent, but we are just responsive. We are responding to the violence that is meted to us by the police, by the bouncers, and by the management. The management is to be paying for all the violence. The management of the university is the one that is violent. The management of all institutions of higher learning is the one that is violent. So you cannot blame students to say that they are violent. You cannot blame students to say that we are not violent. We are a peaceful institution, and that consists of peaceful student activities.
So you're saying students are not violent, it is actually management that is violent towards students. But how do you justify the violent nature of protest at universities? If that isn't violent, then what is it?
They are responsive. They are responsive. Go to VAT. At VAT, when Adam Habib called bouncers and so forth, what did they do? They placed females in the front. And those females were saying that we are not fighting, we are only peaceful. They even took off their t-shirts and so forth. They were left naked and so forth. And that was a demonstration to say that we are not fighting, we are just peaceful. But what did they do? were dragging those students like they are some kind of object.
No, I've seen that.
In the van, as naked as they were.
Yeah, those were some very graphic images we saw coming from vets in 2014, 15, and 16. But in me saying that TUT is thought to be politicized, is the robustness of your protest and your involvement in movements such as Fees Must Fall and Outsourcing Must Fall. You seem to be at the forefront of those movements. So I suppose that is where the idea that your institution is politicized is coming from.
And perhaps there's a few, or there's a clique of people who are politicized and conscious. Understand? Because for you to engage in a struggle for Fees Must Fall, a struggle for Outsourcing Must Fall, you have to be conscious. You have to understand what our parents are going through every day in this institution of higher learning. They are being subjected to law, standards, and so forth. But the job, the work that they are doing is heavy. You know that student on their very nature that did. You understand? Go to all these buildings in the morning, you find the buildings, dates, and so forth. And our students, they wake up, our parents, they wake up each and every day to go to those buildings and clean. Even in residences and so forth, they clean. But at the end of the month, what do they get? Peanuts. 1.8, 2.3. That is not that's not it is actually a problem. That's why I was saying that TUT is the one that is violent. It is violent to students. It's also violent to our parents and so forth. Understand? No, because that is violation. Is violent on its own. Yeah, you understand?
I think you have partly answered my next question, but if we look at the generation of Steve Biko as a point of reference to what student activism should be about, are student activists in this generation doing what they should be doing? I mean, are you seeing them, or are you being proactively involved in fighting for social justice and addressing societal issues?
Remember, the students are the ones who said that the statue of Roth must fall at Roth University. Correct. The statue of Roth must go down. Students are the ones who started demanding for outsourcing to fall. Students are the ones who demanded for free, quality, and decolonized education. And you go to UP, one of our comrades, Amla, who's under house arrest, he fought for Africans to fall in that university, because that university was still using that language as a medium of instruction. Go to what you call to University of Free State, the same thing was applied. So it's students who said that enough is enough.
There's actually quite a few. Northwest University as well. Afrikaans is predominantly used there.
No, I'm trying to demonstrate to you that we are still following on the footsteps of the generation of Steve Biko by fighting for social justice and so forth. You understand? Because even free education, when you say free education, we don't just mean that we want to decommodify the education and so forth. Understand? We are saying that also free the content of colonial content. Because what we are doing now, we're just learning books of America, books of England, and so forth. And we're not learning anything about our own struggles. We're not learning anything about Steve Biko. We're not learning anything about Samora Machel, Amilcar Cabral, and all those African revolutionaries and icons and so forth. So when you say that we want free quality education, decommodifying the education and also free the content, that's what you mean by free education. So all these things can only culminate in one conviction if that person is conscious of being black, the knowledge of self, who you are as a black person. Because we cannot know ourselves if we don't love ourselves, if we don't know where we come from, and so forth. So that's why I'm saying that we are following directly on the footsteps of Steve Biko.
But oftentimes, as I've said, I know you personally, and I know you to be the most one of the most sober thinkers that I know, essentially in my circles. But do you find that oftentimes students involved in student politics are driven by selfish and sinister motives, such as benefits of being in SRC and privileges along with powers that come with being close to influential people, and your ability to mobilize, which scares management without a doubt? Are student leaders not accomplice to the problem of corruption at our universities? Then why are they not voicing these issues such of corruptions and these activities, sexual violence happening at universities? What are they doing about it? What are you doing about it?
It's not every organization that engage in such a.
But generally, would you say they're involved in corruption?
They are accomplices to corruption, because many a times we find that to deploy people to SRC, and when they get there, what they do, they sell out the struggle of the student. They are being bribed by the management, and then they end up not listening to students. They end up not listening to the organization that deployed them, and that thing has led to many revolutions being taken, more especially TUT. It has led to many SRC members being sidelined, that at some point we don't recognize you anymore because you are no longer doing what we sent you there to do, and so forth. Because now you are being led by hunger, you are being controlled by a desire to go to America. Because that's what they do. That's how they capture SRC members. They take them to Europe. They
give them all the small packs and
yes, all these benefits they give them. When they say to SRC, we want the budget from the SRC, part of the budget of the SRC to actually buy sanitary towels and give it to those students who can't afford sanitary towels. Because some of the students, they can't come to classes, they can't come to school because they are going to this natural disease of menstruation. So I think that part of the SRC budget must go to such programs and so forth. When they get there, they end up feeling the revolution. Why? Because they know that if they advocate for such, they will end up cutting some of their benefits and so forth. They will end up have to compromise some of the benefits of going to Cape Town and all other places and so forth. So yes, we are correct that they are accomplices to the problems that we are having in this university and other universities and so forth. Yes.
Sexual violence at universities such as Rhodes and elsewhere, almost every university has a case of some sort that has to do with sexual violence. But what proactive role should activists be playing in addressing this issue to disrupt the lawlessness in this regard, essentially? What do you think of that?
A black man, first and foremost, is a damaged man. He needs to be fixed. Understand? Because ordinarily, if a black man was fixed, you will know that I can't do this to one of my own. Because remember, if you love yourself, you are not going to force yourself to a poor black child. You are not going to perpetuate any violence against any female. Because we are one, we are black people. But of course, you understand that thing started in 1712. If you have read the Willie Lynch letter on how Willie Lynch was a slave owner from the West Indies who was invited in Virginia. Because the slave owners of that place were unable to control their slaves. Then they invited him. Then when arrived there, he advised them of the method on how to actually capture these things. And he said that if these things are correctly installed, they are going to refuel and regenerate for 200 years to come, if not 1,000 years to come. He said one of the things that you must do, you must change the language. Because the language having a dual character of being a means of communication and also the bearer of culture, it means that you have taken their culture away from them.
Absolutely.
You understand? And the second thing that you must do, you must pitch a black man against a black woman. And that thing is still happening even today. We're still fighting amongst ourselves. We find black women fighting black men fighting black women. So that's why I'm saying that we need to be fixed. I think this is the dialogue that we must be having in all issues of higher learning on how we can actually
liberate
or obliterate this violence against women and so forth, and how we can liberate a black person and so forth. I think we must have dialogue and also policies in issues of higher learning must be enacted that can actually protect what you call the females and so forth. And also security must be strengthened because in TUT, its security is very poor. That's why we find that people, they come from the train station, then they come here, they rape our students. They even steal their letters because of lack of security. So these are the things that must be done. Dialogue, strengthening of security. And there are many things that can be done.
Indeed. But do you believe that patriarchy plays a role in the lack of interest by society in this phenomenon of sexual violence and rape culture at universities? I mean, in your opinion, is there adequate representation of women in leadership roles among students?
In SRC, you mean in terms of ladies and so forth?
Yeah, women.
Well, I've not
women representation.
But you would understand that many organizations, not only EFF, SC, even SASCO, they have adopted the policy of a zebra approach. if you receive 2 seats, it means that you need to put 1 male and 1 female. If you receive 4 seats, 1 female.
So it has to be
it's
proportionally balanced.
That's why even in the leadership of the branches, they say that we want 50 female and 50 male representative in the leadership and so forth. So yes, I don't think there's a problem of ladies being represented in leadership position and so forth. But there's a problem of females being scared and afraid to go to occupy leadership of high responsibilities. For I think they lack confidence in themselves. Others, you really have to force them so that you must go, because at some point we are forced by the policies of our own organization. The mother police person said, no, we're not going to accept 2 males there. We said we want a zebra approach. Some others will have to fetch them from their rooms. That's what they bring you to the RC. We want you to be treasurer of this thing. You understand? So it's a problem. We must group our women. We must make them to understand that they're important and then they're intelligent as we are as men.
From an early age, that is.
We have to understand. So the issue of patriarchy is still there. Patriarchy exists, and patriarchy is part of the reason why our ladies are being raped and beaten up every day. I think a dialogue
and their opinions being disregarded by most people. That is patriarchy essentially, because they're thought to be speaking nonsense, or they're being emotional. Whenever they mention cases, they're being emotional, or they're being women. They you shouldn't be listening to them. It is wrong,
very wrong. But as I said, as black men, we are sick and we need to be fixed. There's no other way. But it's not only a dialogue that we must have in society of identity. It's a societal dialogue that we must have in every sphere of communities, of towns, and so forth. I think is the only way to avert this problem or this quagmire that has taken our people.
Considering the recent spate of violence at high schools in the country, where we're seeing teachers being attacked by learners at schools, we saw one learner going as far as carrying a knife to school to stab a teacher to death because the teacher did not want to give him a second plate of food the day before, apparently. Are we seeing this kind of behavior at universities? Should we be concerned, and what should SRCs be doing to prevent this kind of behavior spreading into universities?
No, first and foremost, the Institute of Filing, that has not happened, where you find a
lecture being
a learner beating up a lecture. It has not happened and so forth. But I fear that in the near future we might just encounter such a problem, because remember that those kids who are beating up their teachers in high school and so forth, they are coming to university and so forth. And they are going to continue to promote such culture even in universities of beating up lecturers and so forth.
Correct.
So you just said that this thing, some of the things that forced that learner to beat up a teacher because he was hung and so forth. So you want to avoid these things, remove conditions that give rise to these things, address unemployment, address poverty, address inequalities. Then these things, you are not going to see them anymore. You understand? I think my position is clear there.
I am inclined to agree with you there. I think the problem is much deeper than what we are seeing as symptoms. But Sfundo, have you won the fight for free education as activists?
Free education, I think I've answered that question. Because our struggle was always about free education for all, not for a certain few. You understand? So what you find today, you find that remember that previously we had to go to the street because we were complaining about the discrepancies and irregularities of NSFAS. Sometimes we find that they don't fund, sometimes we find that they do fund. I would make an example of that kid who received 14. Is that kid?
40, was it 14 million? Yeah.
In a extra card. That thing is to be blamed on the shoulders of the NSFAS. You understand? Even then, there was still a lot of students being excluded, being outside of the system of NSFAS, and they were unable to fund their own tuition fees and residencies and so forth. And even today, we still encounter the same problem, because it's still the same thing it's still the same system that is operating, the system of NSFAS. You apply for NSFAS, you tell them of poverty. They require many things, death certificates. Some of us don't even know where our fathers are. You don't even know if they are dead. You understand what
you have to travel many kilometers to make a copy and certify your things.
We are still subjected to the same situation as we were before. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed now is that for first year, if you're a first year and you receive this fast, you will be no longer be required to pay it back. It's like a sort of a buzzer.
Yeah.
But still, even there are still many students who are excluded by NSFAS. So I believe that we have not really achieved free education. We have not really decommodified free education, because what has happened is that they increased the VAT. And remember, VAT, the VAT is being paid by what? By the working class. Those who are working as teachers and so forth.
So
even in terms of the filling the content of it, was still subjected to the very capitalist education that was subjected.
It was like, we'll give you free education, but you'll pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not free yet.
You pay for it in the back door and so forth, through this increment of VAT, increment of petrol and so forth. So there's no free education. It's not free in terms of being decommodified. It's not free in terms of the content itself. We're still learning about Hitler. We're still learning. I was doing marketing in 2016. I was using this Book of America for advertising and so forth. Even till today, you can go there. They're still using that Book of America. Even when they make example of New York and Saint Francis and so forth.
Yeah.
So there is no such thing as free education.
We're paying for it.
We're still paying for it.
What are your views on academic exclusion?
Academic exclusion is being caused by many things. Understand? We're actually engaging about such. One of the things is anxiety. Anxiety being caused by what? Being caused by poverty. You understand? Students, they don't have NSFAS. They don't have money to buy food. You understand?
They stay far from campus. Yes. They have to.
Exactly. You understand? They don't have money to buy books. What do you expect? I'm experiencing that problem as a student activist as a speak. I don't have money to afford some of the books. It's a problem. And those are the causes of the high academic exclusion that we're experiencing at TUT. So those things, they must be blamed to the management, they must be blamed to the government, the students and so forth. Students, all of them who came here, they qualified to be here. It means that they are capable to pass their courses in due time and so forth. But because of the economic conditions that they are confronted with when they come here, they start to lose focus. They start to engage with other things. Others, they even sell their bodies there and just to get money to buy food and so forth. So it's a real problem.
They fall victim to the sugar daddy thing.
So it's a real problem that we're facing. Understand? Also, this thing of sugar daddy it also contributes to the gender-based violence. It contributes because these sugar daddies, once these ladies they start to run away from them and date boys of their age, these sugar daddies are the ones who are killing them. They are killing these ladies of ours. You understand? So our society is damaged. It needs to be fixed. But first and foremost, let's address the issue of unemployment, of poverty, and inequalities. Then the rest is going to fall into place.
Do you believe in violence being the answer? I mean, was it necessary for Fees Must Fall to be as violent as it was? Because my view is that if someone burnt a library in 2015 and possibly deprived a would-be student their right to quality education by destroying university property and resources, why should the president pardon them for those crimes? Why shouldn't they have to undergo normal criminal or court processes through which they can account for their crime?
We don't believe that violence is an answer on any day and any time, by the way. We believe in peaceful transaction, peaceful processes, peaceful negotiations. And I've answered that question before.
Yeah, you have.
You said that we are forced to respond through violent means even ourselves. You understand me? So
because it can be a final option in some instances.
Exactly. Even during the time of Steve Big, it happened. He said that there's no any other way now because we've been writing letters and begging and so on. Nothing's changed. Now we have to take it to the street. So even us, we're first to do that. Understand? But we don't promote any violent activities. And we are saying that those Fees Must Fall activists who are incarcerated, who are still attending court cases, who are expelled from the university, they must be given amnesty. If those who have engaged in apartheid regime, those who have engaged in atrocities against the black natives during the apartheid regime were forgiven, the likes of de Klerk, they were never arrested, the likes of P.W. Border, even though they were never arrested. There are many people who were complicit in the violence against our black people during the time of apartheid. Those people, they were forgiven. So even others, they were rewarded with cabinet posts during the time of Mandela. So why not these ones?
So true.
Why not these ones? Because these ones at least they were not maintaining any black dominance or promoting any black dominance under the apartheid regime that was protecting white privilege. Us were fighting for a noble cause of free and equalized education, so that even us who can be at the same standard or equal standard with white people. So why to arrest them? Because this thing, it was a political action and it needs political intervention. So amnesty must be provided to these leaders of our time, so that even themselves they can continue to enjoy the fruit of their sweat and so forth. Because they can't enjoy such thing if they're beyond bars.
Sfundo Mafuyeka, a student activist from TUT. Leader, final thoughts?
No, there are a lot of things that we can
divulge on
as it relates to student activism, because I also believe that students activists, they must write their own history. They must write their own books about what transpired during their term of office, during their term as a student activist, because we don't want a situation whereby in the near future our history is being distorted, as in the case of many of our heroes who struggled for this democracy. Their histories are being distorted and so forth. So for us to avoid such, let's write books and let's think before acting. Let's not make violence the only way to achieve a particular resolution or achieve a particular something and so forth. Let's teach ourselves to engage. Let's dialogue. Let's debate. Let's exhaust all avenues. Let's think, because in the absence of thinking, anarchy is going to take place. So, in student activists, we need think tankers. We need people who are not afraid to engage, to stand in public and conscientize our people. Let's go back to the society to conscientize our people. That is part of being a student activity. It must not only be limited in campus or limited in the university where you are at. It must even go to the rural communities where we come from ourselves, to educate our people. Even apply for them if needs be. Understand?
Liberate them.
Forms and so forth. Because where we come from, in rural areas, they know this Wi-Fi, everything. So people that
they don't even know how to use a computer.
Exactly. Hence, you find that some of the students, they apply for courses that they know they do not necessarily have passion of. When they get here, they struggle. So it's a problem. You must give career guidance to such people. Understand? But also that thing comes with loving yourself. How do you love yourself? Through precautions, being conscious of yourself. Where do you come from? What do you want to see in the community? So those are some of the things that you must engage on as a student activist and so forth.
And just to end it off, this is some of what he had to say with regards to the situation that was unfolding at the time at the two TUT campuses in Soshanguve.
It's not the first time this thing is happening, you understand? Because those people, they are now pursuing their own agendas. It's not about to seek justice for Monareng, and so forth. We understand that. I think is there that thing of corruption in the university. We understand that within the institution itself, there are people who are funding those boys to keep doing whatever they're doing. You understand? Because initially it was really for the justice of to get justice for Monareng. Understand? But as it went on, we realized some elements. We have complained of EFF, that's and then they told us, everything said, no, this thing is no longer genuine. It has been infiltrated by other elements who seek to cause disruptions in the university and so forth. Because even there, the economists of Sfundo University, those people are fighting amongst themselves. You understand? So they usually use these two informations to actually advance their own agendas. So we can't be part of that mess ourselves. You understand? Because we are here for academics first and foremost. If you see that all our activities, because remember, we've been sending emails complaining about lots of things, complaining about the Wi-Fi and everything. We've been called in meetings, we've said that we have resolved those things. You understand? If there are means for us to resolve issues peacefully, then why take it to the street? Because our primary objective is to...
Because it can be done. There has to be a pragmatic way to solve these issues.
We usually take matters to the street when there's a deadlock between us and the management. That's when we say, no, now we have no any other alternative but to take it to the street. You understand? That's why I've said, no, Soshanguve is on their own. People of Soshanguve, they're on their own. Their comrades who are now being expelled, then they were told that, now the strike is about... bring back the comrades that are expelled and so forth, understand? But to have channels to actually advance such a struggle, first and foremost, peacefully, before we can take it to the street.
Yeah,
You understand?
yeah.
So
And vele, like they're considering it vele, the Department of Justice.
the Department of Justice cannot give presidential pardon. It's only the president that can give presidential pardon.
Yeah,
That
but
thing is
I
not-
think
it's not
did
genuine.
the Minister of Justice not issue a statement saying
It's not
they
genuine.
understand the cause?
It's not genuine. The agreement is not genuine. I can tell you.
Okay.
You know how these people they operate. They just decided to give them that hope because they wanted to actually chase them away from the union buildings and to actually calm them down.
Yeah.
Because the more people who keep asking for amnesty and so forth, that thing at the end was going to culminate into a revolution. Because people, our students, they're going to start organizing themselves to say that we can't allow our leaders, those who fought for free education, to suffer alone and so forth. We must join them and engage in this struggle and so forth.
Yeah.
Then that was going to result in universities being shut down, properties being destroyed and so forth. So they did that thing to actually manage the situation before it can even culminate into something very bad and so forth.
Get out of control.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I think that's the reason. But gives rise to crime. What are those conditions? It's inequality, unemployment, and poverty. Some people they engage in crime because of what they want to put bread and butter in their tables. They want to satisfy their stomach. They want to look after their family.
The cause is actually noble.
You understand? The people commit crime because they've seen that these white people, they're the ones who are owning the means of production. Understand? They have everything. In fact, we must not only put the blame to white people, we must also put the blame to the blacks, the blacks petty bourgeoisie. The likes of Sarah Maposa, those are the petty black bourgeoisie. Julius Malema himself is a black petty bourgeoisie and so forth. You understand? Because these people, they live a lavish lifestyle, they enjoy all that wealth alone. You understand? So for us to actually satisfy ourselves, to actually put bread on the table, what must we do? Because there are no jobs and so forth. The education system of South Africa is very poor.
Dysfunctional.
So let's just engage in this thing so that we can make a
living
of ourselves. So you want to remove all these things, remove conditions that give rise to this, to the climate, to criminality.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like that.
Well, there you have it. That was the first episode of KatlegoOpining podcast. Feel free to engage us on social media using the hashtag KatlegoOpining, and also follow us on Twitter at KatlegoOpining. Also follow Sfundo on Facebook. It is Sfundo Mafuyeka. Be on the lookout for the second episode in 2 weeks. Thank you for listening.
Sayofuna abafundisi obaxe